The morning I stepped onto my porch and saw my lawn Apache, sun-scorched wasteland begging for a drop of mercy, I knew something was rotten in the pristine suburb of Willow Creek. Across the street, Evelyn Harper's yard bloomed like it had been kissed by a tropical deity. Her tulips stood tall, her hydrangeas practically glowed, and her emerald grass shimmered with dew that looked professionally applied by some secret guild of landscaping elves. My grass, on the other hand, resembled the aftermath of a biblical plague. I'm not talking suspicious or mildly off, no. This was flat out wrong. Willow Creek isn't just a neighborhood. It's a battlefield where every blade of grass is a status symbol, every flower bed a declaration of dominance. I'd spent years perfecting my irrigation system custom-built, solar-powered, with sensors so precise they could detect a thirsty root from a mile away. I'm not an amateur. I'm Miles Decker, a CIVYL engineer with a master's degree in water management and a side hustle designing sprinkler systems for upscale clients. My lawn wasn't just a hobby. It was my calling card. So when it started dying while Evelyn's paradise thrived, I didn't just raise an eyebrow, I sounded the alarm. The first clue hit me like a brick, my water bill. It had spiked from a modest $60 to a jaw-dropping $147 in a single month. I live alone. No kids splashing in kiddie pools, no dogs digging up the yard, no late-night hot tub experiments. Unless my mailbox had started guzzling H2O, something was seriously off. Then there was Evelyn herself, HOA president, self-appointed dictator of curb appeal, and the kind of woman who'd fine you for breathing too loudly near her peonies. Her yard wasn't just Sir VYVYing our dry spell. It was Thrive VYing, and I had a sinking feeling I was footing the bill. I started with the OBVYS, a leak check. I crawled under bushes, dug up sod, and inspected every inch of my system. Nothing. The pipes were pristine, the valves airtight. I pulled the logs from my irrigation controller twice a week, 20 minutes per zone, right on schedule. But the soil moisture sensors told a different story. Excessive drainage, as if my water was vanishing into thin air. That's when the paranoia kicked in. This wasn't a malfunction, it was sabotage. And in a neighborhood where someone once sued over a mailbox color V violation, suspicion wasn't just warranted, it was Sir VY Val. Evelyn wasn't your average busybody. She was a legend, a suburban tyrant who'd once slapped a $200 fine on a widower for planting daisies instead of the HOA-approved marigolds. She'd sent me a V violation notice for a birdhouse that was, quote, excessively rustic. Her reign over Willow Creek was absolute, her clipboard a scepter, her smile a weapon. And now, as I stood on my cracked, thirsty lawn staring at her botanical empire, I realized she might be more than a control freak, she might be a thief. I needed proof. So I did what any rational, sleep-deprived engineer would do. I turned my yard into a surveillance state. A discreet camera went up by the irrigation box, angled to catch the side fence where my main line ran parallel to hers. Motion sensors synced to my phone. I even rigged a decoy hose to see if someone would take the bait. For 3 days, nothing happened. I started to doubt myself. Maybe it was a leak. Maybe I'd misread the data. Then, at 4:37 a.m., on the fourth night, my phone buzzed. I bolted upright, opened the app, and there she was. Evelyn Harper, in all her glory, creeping through the pre-dawn gloom like a discount ninja. She wore a lime green windbreaker stealth, clearly wasn't her priority, and carried a flashlight in one hand, a wrench in the other. She knelt by my irrigation valve, attached a splitter, and ran a thin, black hose under the fence to her side. Then, in a move that still haunts me, she turned to the camera, smirked, and gave a little wave before sauntering off. It wasn't just bold. It was a declaration of war. She was stealing my water, and she wanted me to know. I sat there, staring at the footage, coffee growing cold in my hand. Anger simmered, but something else bubbled up to admiration. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost. Because Evelyn wasn't just taking my water, she was mocking me, an engineer in my own domain. That's when I decided, if she wanted a fight, I'd give her one. But I wouldn't storm over and yell. That's what she'd expect, and Evelyn thrived on confrontation. No, I'd hit her where it hurt. Her precious garden, her HOA crown, her untouchable ego. This wasn't about petty revenge. It was about justice, served with a twist. I spent the next day in my garage, plotting like a man possessed. I didn't want to just stop her, I wanted her to regret ever crossing me. Step 1. Reroute my secondary line through a hidden valve I could control remotely. Step 2. Concoct a weapon. I settled on a mix of industrial-grade, white Vinegar safe for pipes, deadly for delicate plants, and a neon blue landscaping dye that glowed like a radioactive spill. Non-toxic, HOA-compliant, but guaranteed to turn her tulips into a Smurf's nightmare. I tested it on a patch of weeds first. They shriveled in hours, stained a garish blue that screamed something's wrong here. To seal the deal, I added a secret ingredient, a trace of garlic extract, the kind used in pest repellents. It wouldn't harm her system, but it'd make her yard smell like a vampire's worst nightmare. I programmed the valve to switch at 6:45 a.m. 5 minutes before her usual siphoning time, which I'd clocked from the footage. Then I waited, sipping coffee on my porch, pretending to read the paper while my heart thumped like a war drum. The scream came at 6:52. It wasn't just loud, it was operatic, a high-pitched wail that echoed down the block. I stepped outside, casual as you please, and saw the chaos unfold. Evelyn's sprinklers had erupted, spraying blue-tinted water across her pristine lawn. Her tulips drooped, her hydrangeas sagged, and her walkway looked like a modern art disaster. The garlic stench hit me a second later, faint but unmistakable, like a garlic bread truck had crashed nearby. Evelyn stood in the middle of it, soaked and shrieking, while VYing a hose like it had personally insulted her. Her husband, Toma, a quiet guy who'd clearly married into this mess, ran out in his bathrobe, yelling, "What the hell's happening?" Neighbors peeked from windows, phones already recording. One kid on a bike slowed down, laughed, and shouted, "Your yard's possessed." Evelyn spun toward me, eyes blazing, and marched over, Leah VYing wet footprints on the asphalt. "What did you do?" she hissed, jabbing a blue-stained finger at my chest. I leaned against my mailbox, sipping my coffee. "Me? Looks like you've got a contamination issue. Happens when you tap into someone else's system without permission. Backflow's a real bitch." Her face froze, then twisted into a snarl. "This is vandalism. I'll have you fined, expelled from the HOA." "Go ahead," I said, meeting her glare. "How about footage of you hooking up that hose? Want to explain that to the board?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then stormed off, muttering about legal action. I figured that'd be the end of either warning shot to keep her in line. I was wrong. Evelyn didn't retreat. She reloaded. 2 days later, an email hit my inbox. An official HOA complaint accusing me of environmental sabotage and disrupting community harmony. Evelyn had gone full medieval, demanding a hearing and a due law 500 fine. She claimed my toxic runoff had ruined her garden, conveniently omitting her theft. The board scheduled a meeting for Friday, and I knew she'd turn it into her personal kangaroo court. I showed up prepared. Laptop loaded with timestamps, camera footage queued up, and a printed water bill showing the spike. The board, 5 tired souls who'd rather be anywhere else, sat around a folding table in the community center. Evelyn strutted in, dressed like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama, and launched into a 15-minute tirade about my malicious intent. I waited, calm as a monk, until she finished. Then I played the VY Deo. The room went silent as Evelyn's lime green figure fiddled with my valve, waved at the camera, and strolled off. Carl, a grizzled ex-cop who'd tangled with her before, let out a bark of laughter. "Well, shit, Evelyn. That's you." She didn't flinch. That was a temporary measure during the drought. He approved it verbally. When I asked, crossing my arms, "At the barbecue, I wasn't in VY Ted to because you banned me over my patio chairs." Carl snorted. Evelyn turned pink. The board didn't fine her, they couldn't. Not without more EVY dents, but they didn't fine me either. Stalemate. I thought I'd won a small VY Tory, a chance to breathe. But Evelyn wasn't done. She was just getting creative. Evelyn's HOA complaint didn't just fizzlight lit a fuse. By the next morning, my mailbox held a neon yellow flyer titled Preserve Willow Creek Harmony. It was her handiwork, a call to arms disguised as a plea for unity. Some residents hoard resources while others nurture beauty, it read, with a not-so-subtle dig at selfish water wasters. She'd even proposed a community irrigation initiative overseen by Surprise herself. The flyer didn't mention her theft, but it didn't have to. Everyone knew who the VY lane was supposed to be. I wasn't about to let her rewrite the narrative. My system pinged again that night, 2:14 a.m., a pressure drop on the secondary line. I checked the footage. Evelyn, now in a black hoodie and gardening gloves, had upgraded her game. She'd bypassed my splitter with a reinforced hose, buried it under mulch, and rerouted it through a sprinkler head on her side. She wasn't just siphoning water, she was building a pipeline. The woman had gone from petty thief to suburban warlord overnight. I could have cut her off again, but that was too easy. She'd expect it, and I'd learned Evelyn thrived on predictability. She'd just dig deeper, literally. Instead, I let her think she'd won. For 2 days, I let my water flow into her system, watching her tulips perk up and her smug grin return. She even waved at me over the fence, all sugar and spite, like she'd outsmarted me. I waved back, plotting. Phase 2 of Operation Drench, and dye needed a boulder palette. I swapped the blue dye for a screaming orange thin construction cones meets nuclear sunset and ditched the Vinegar for fish emulsion fertilizer. It was organic, biodegradable, and smelled like a dockside dumpster in August. I tweaked the pressure settings to maximize spray range and set the trap for her next big move. A garden tour she'd advertised on the HOA Facebook page. Join me Saturday at 9 a.m. for tea, scones, and floral inspiration, she'd posted, complete with a selfie amid her suspiciously lush roses. Saturday dawned bright and clear. I jogged a loop around the block, timing my return to catch the show. At 8:55, Evelyn's backyard buzzed with HOA loyalist clipboards in hand, pastel outfits pristine. At 9 o'clock sharp, my valve flipped. The first geyser of orange, fish-scented water burst from her centerpiece sprinkler, arcing over the crowd like a toxic rainbow. Screams erupted. A woman in a sun hat dropped her scone and bolted. A guy in khakis gagged, clutching his nose. Evelyn's prized roses turned into a soggy, orange mess, petals dripping like melted crayons. She lunged for the shutoff valve, twisting wildly, but I'd rigged the pressure to backfire. A final blast hit her square in the chest, soaking her linen dress and sending her staggering. Her guests fled, one yelling, "This is worse than the skunk incident." A kid on a scooter filmed the whole thing, cackling. I leaned against a tree, sunglasses on, sipping a water bottle, and watched her empire dissolve in 90 seconds flat. Evelyn didn't confront me this time. She vanished inside, blind snapping shut, Leah VYing her flamingo lawn ornamented garish orange casualty toppled in the muck. I thought I'd finally broken her. I was wrong again. The neighborhood DVY'd. Word spread fast. By noon, the VY Deo was on Nextdoor with the caption, "Evelyn's Orange Apocalypse." Comments range from "Karma's a sprinkler" to "Who's the real HOA VY lane here?" The neighborhood split like a fault line. Evelyn's loyalists, mostly older residents who feared her wrath, called me a vandal. Others, fed up with her reign, sent me quiet nods or anonymous thumbs-ups through my fence slats. Carl, the ex-cop from aboard, knocked on my door that afternoon. "You're stirring a hornet's nest, Miles," he said, half grinning. "She's pissed, but half the block's cheering." "What's your endgame?" "Endgame?" I shrugged, handing him a beer. "She stopped stealing my water." "Simple." He chuckled. "Simple's not her style. Watch your back." He was right. Monday brought a new flyer. Emergency HOA meeting addressing toxic threats. Evelyn had doubled down, framing me as a public health hazard. She'd even hired a water quality expert, some guy named Vince with a clipboard and a fake Tonto tester system. I watched from my porch as Vince poked around her yard, scribbling notes, while Evelyn pointed accusingly at my house. The report, emailed to all residents, claimed unidentified contaminants had ruined her pipes, hinting at sabotage. No mention of her hose, of course. I wasn't worried fish emulsion's legal, and my dye was EPA approved. But the optics were bad, and Evelyn knew it. The meeting loomed like a storm cloud. I needed allies. Enter Lena Ortiz, my next-door neighbor, and a single mom who'd clashed with Evelyn over her son's basketball hoop, visually disruptive. Lena was a paralegal, sharp as a tack, and had a grudge deeper than mine. She fined me due law $150 for a crack planter last year. Lena said over coffee in my kitchen. I say we take her down. What's the plan? Expose her, I said, sliding my laptop over. I've got footage, logs, and a paper trail. She's not just stealing from Mesh, extorting the whole block. Lena's eyes lit up. Let's dig. I'll check HOA records. She's sloppy with money, bet we'll find something. We split the work. I upgraded my system pressure sensors, flow trackers, even a decoy line to bait Evelyn while Lena combed through years of HOA minutes. Thursday night, she texted me a bombshell. Found it. She's been skimming dues for landscaping consults, due law $12K, over 2 years, no receipts. Friday's meeting was standing room only. Evelyn opened with a tearful speech about community betrayal, flashing Vince's report like a holy relic. I waited my turn, then stood, laptop in hand. Let's talk facts, I said, projecting the footage of her hose hookup. Gasps rippled through the room. And while we're at it, where's the due law $12,000 for landscaping consults, Evelyn? Lena handed out copies of the financials, highlighted lines showing phantom charges. The crowd erupted. Carl slammed his gavel. Enough. We're auditing everything. Evelyn, sit down. She didn't. She stormed out, vowing justice. The audit motion passed 4-1, her lone ally abstaining. Victory tasted sweet until the next morning. At 3:07 a.m., my soil sensor screamed, saturation levels off the charts. I checked the camera. Evelyn, in a raincoat, had sliced in her own main line, redirecting a flood toward my property. By dawn, my driveway was a river, my garage ankle-deep. Her yard was a swamp, but she'd framed it as my fault, calling the city to report hazardous runoff from my system. The inspector arrived at 9 a.m. A no-nonsense woman named Priya, who saw through Evelyn's act in 10 minutes. This isn't backflow, Priya said, tracing the gushing pipe to Evelyn's yard. This is vandalism. She issued a due law $1,200 fine and a cease and desist order. Evelyn tried to blame me, but my footage now, including her midnight sabotage, sealed her fate. That night, she snapped. In a final act of defiance, she rerouted her busted line again, aiming for my house. But her shoddy splicing backfired literally. A pressure surge blew her front sprinkler, flooding her porch and shorting her outdoor lights in a shower of sparks. Neighbors gathered, phones out, as Evelyn stood drenched and defeated, screaming into the void. The HOA met the next day. Carl presented the audit. Due law 15 came missing, funneled to Evelyn's consultants, aka her cousin's shell company. The board voted her out unanimously. She sold her house a week later, fleeing to parts unknown, her legacy a soggy, orange-stained mess. Spring arrived quiet and green. My lawn thrived, wildflowers buzzing with bees along the fence where Evelyn's hose once ran. Carl took over as HOA president, banning water theft with a due law $5,000 fine. We threw a potluck meet chili one again, and life settled into a rare, beautiful calm. One morning, a package arrived, a purple flamingo and a note. Brilliant move, Miles. Call me if you ever need backup, HOA, Sir V-Wive or the two. I grinned, setting it by my gnome. Across the street, new neighbors moved in, a young couple with a puppy and 0 clipboards. Willow Creek was free, and my sprinklers hummed in VY Tory. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching. and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.